Today we're going to talk about the most violent strike in Adelaide's history. Working conditions weren't like they are today. Work wasn't guaranteed, trade unions were still young, and there was no such thing as Centrelink to fall back on if you're out of work. Workers would gather at the intersection of Lipson and Divot Street in search of work. This corner became known as Poverty Corner, and this system was known as the Bull System. Basically, workers would wait around for hours to be picked by employers for a couple of hours or a day's work. What this meant is that the bosses would often pick the workers who were the least troublesome, less likely to raise safety issues, or known to be associated with trade unions or trade union activity, so it didn't affect the profit margins. Despite the insecurity of work, it was at this time that a member of the Commonwealth Court of Conciliation and Arbitration in Sydney, known as George Beebe, decided it was his time to shine and handed down a new award worse than the old. This policy included cutting workers' break time, removing daytime smoko on all cargo ships, Wharfies being paid less for evening and night shifts, favouring the Bull System, waterfront workers requiring a licence or dog collar to work. The Act effectively allowed the government to control who worked on the dock. Members of the Waterside Workers' Federation rejected the award and began a strike on September 11, refusing to attend work. The Port Adelaide community grew more and more hostile as strikebreakers were brought in. To combat this, the police presence also grew. 1,000 volunteers were sworn in as Citizens Defence Deputies, called the Essential Services Volunteers, and 500 middle-class men were sworn in as Special Constables. They were all equipped with rifles and bayonets to break the strike. The strike reached a fever pitch 3 weeks later on the 27th of September, when 5,000 unionists, families and supporters marched on Port Adelaide wharves and boarded ships with pipes, iron bars, sticks, stones and even bailing hooks to attack the scabs at one dock. Many of the scabs had to jump into the water to escape the crowd. The crowd then marched 6 miles to Outer Harbour to try to clear out strikebreakers at work there. Unfortunately, by the time they got there, the police had been called to break the strike by force, and so a violent battle began.
That's the sound of the police!
The Register newspaper reported the violence as without parallel in the history of the state. The Wharfies didn't win the dispute in 1928, but continued to agitate and ultimately revoked the Dog Collar Act and won the right to a dignified engagement or pick-up system. The democratic rank-and-file decision-making led to many more valuable conditions of employment that are still enjoyed today and improved on for MUA workers and for the working class in general. MUA, here to stay.